And from food security, jobs, cultural heritage, protection from storms, these reefs matter most for the people who live alongside them. Coral reefs, together with mangrove forests and oyster reefs, actually act like the best seawalls possible. A healthy reef reduces wave energy by 97%. So these ecosystems are taking care of us in so many ways, which is why it's important to be able to deliver solutions to scale restoration. So using the open source science of microfragmenting, we are able to grow corals up to 50 times faster, which translates into months and years instead of decades and centuries, not only making the restoration work more affordable per coral, but also unlocking really critical species diversity so we can achieve more holistic restoration for the reefs. We've got an incredible team, advisors, partners, and a global restoration community that is fighting to ensure that the ecosystems that sustain all of us everywhere will survive for generations to come.
The sculpture at the park is a question mark that now you're compelled to want to answer. Maybe not answer with an answer, but answer with a question. I created the underwater as a way of helping my neighbors understand their vulnerability to rising seas. I did that by creating a series of public art projects and installations that help map the topography of Miami, which is a very flat space. And they can then make yard signs and put them in front of their homes so that they can begin to tell their neighbors that everyone up and down that block is vulnerable to rising seas.
This is the material that I love. We're using aggregate that is recycled aggregate. Instead of using fresh water, we're using seawater. And instead of using only Portland cement, we're using supplemental cementitious material.
You see this number at a park, you can scan the QR code and finally you understand what this number 6 is about. This number 6 means that your park is at 6 feet above sea level, which means that your home across the street is also at 6 feet above sea level. Through art, we created 287 pathways, 270 venues in 287 parks, 287 points where community can understand instead of building a home with a high carbon concrete, you can build it with this. Why is this happening to us? What can we do about it? How do I make a difference? Those are the things that art does.
Esse é o grande desafio, é combinar soluções climáticas para o planeta e solução para a vida das pessoas em cada território que a gente atua. Na Belterra, nós combinamos dois impactos: restaurar milhões de hectares de áreas degradadas e, ao mesmo tempo, melhorar a renda e as condições de vida de centenas de milhares de famílias. Uma das soluções mais acessível, mais barata para países em desenvolvimento é gerar um modelo de desenvolvimento rural que seja carbono positivo e, com isso, permitir que o planeta tenha um desenvolvimento sustentável para as próximas décadas. Soluções escaláveis e modelos que sejam efetivamente transformadores e que façam transformações sistêmicas dependem de que todos ao redor engajem, acreditem e participem da transformação. Esse tipo de negócio que ajuda o planeta também muda a vida das pessoas no dia a dia. Eu acho que é esse equilíbrio entre o lado pessoal e o lado social, empresarial, é que nós precisamos trilhar.
Every morning I wake up, and when I look at the mirror, I know I'm doing the work and I'm giving my best. It takes time, and I have to understand that this has nothing to do with me. This is a much bigger thing than me. Basically, what I'm doing is post-consumer upcycling. I can calculate how much of natural resources this is saving as I'm using it from post-consumer, which can't be sold anymore in this form. I think the best case scenario for upcycling would be that it would be recognized as a process which could be imprinted into every level of clothing production. I'm trying to build a movement out of upcycling to empower the people who are making the clothing to think otherwise, that they would say stop to the production type we have now. Giving my knowledge and know-how to other people that they could feel the way I do. And if somebody else can feel that way, the textile and the sewing is only a vehicle on getting that feeling.
Saving our biodiversity is the connection between us and it. You're not just saving species for the sake of them in a single spot. It's that we're saving species because it affects everyone. The Environmental Awareness Group is Antigua and Barbuda's longest standing environmental NGO, and we've been doing this work since 1989.
We're very big on science and data collection, and we believe that once we have collected sufficient data, given it to different bodies such as the Department of Environment, feeding it into different statistical databases, etc., that we'll be able to influence policy and help decision makers to make decisions supported by science.
If you saw the Redonda of yesterday, there was no vegetation, to the point that the cliffs were literally falling into the surrounding seas. And you have species here that we can't find anywhere else.
Once people get to see that and be a part of saving that, then that becomes also a part of our traditions, a part of our culture, and a part of who we are.
I need to do something to bring people closer to nature. My name is Dick Semakwale, Community Extensions Manager for Afran Parks Majete. To convince someone who has been a poacher to be somebody who is able to appreciate nature and support it, it's not an easy job. And we are dealing with a mindset change here. If you want to make sure that we have a sustainable environmental management, local communities who suffers more, they need to be involved, they need to be engaged. They should not be left out. The moment we leave them out, it means the effort, all effort that we are doing, they are invalid. We go into the communities and engage them, bring them to a round table. Some few minutes, you see, we are moving together.
Pano tukupanga zamadramu asomba, tina pempha majete kuti nafeso programu tikuifuna. Izi zilizofunikira kwa ife chifukwa choti malmoti tikanapita ku majete kwa unonga nkhalango.
Communities feel they are part of us and we are part of the communities. So that's why the trust and mutual benefit comes in. The African parks can live, but the structure that we have left, the understanding that we have left within the communities should proceed.
If someone wants to bring change, you've got to be moved by humanity to see a better life in someone.
Globi is one of our drone service providers who is helping us with collection of aerial imagery in times of emergencies and during the preparedness. So this project is an example on where we used Globi's services to collect aerial imagery for flood modeling purposes. There is a community apparently living here, and they are really at risk of getting flooded during these situations.
The position we are in to be able to provide data, sometimes real-time, efficiently and speedily through our operators, it's not just technology, it's something that we're actually doing to solve real people's problems.
There's a lot of different things that you can utilize drone data for, and we are making sure that the organizations that need the data to make more informed decisions for our climate.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for joining us here today. We're extremely happy to have you here with us to discuss the topic of arts organizations as climate activists. To briefly introduce myself, my name is Wahid Al-Hadrami, and I am the Director of the National Cultural and Creative Industries Promotion Department at the Ministry of Culture. I'm also a fellow of the National Experts Program. I'm very honored to be here at the UAE Pavilion to moderate this session as part of the National Experts Program at COP28. Developed under the direction of His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, President of the UAE, NEP is a launchpad for professionals who wish to play a deeper role in the transformation of key sectors in the UAE's economy. I have the privilege of being on stage with Antonia Carver to speak about how artists, nonprofits, and arts organizations act as climate activists. To briefly introduce our speaker, Antonia leads the Art Jameel teams in both the UAE and Saudi Arabia and oversees programs across arts, heritage, and education. She joined in 2016 with a mandate to develop the Jameel Art Center in Dubai and Hay Jameel in Jeddah, and has led a new period of radical growth for the organization. Previously, Antonia was also the director of Art Dubai and has written extensively on Middle Eastern art and film. Please join me in giving a round of hands to our wonderful panelists.
Thank you.
So to begin our conversation, I'd like to touch upon how arts organizations have a responsibility in designing systematic solutions to culture-based climate action. Arts organizations could play the role of climate activists as they are able to influence opinions and changing behaviors of their wider communities and networks in order to create social change. Antonia, if we look at it from a more holistic perspective, how would you describe the arts could engage with climate change?
Well, thank you, Wahida, and it's such a pleasure to be here and to be invited by the National Experts session, so thank you so much. Yes, well, if we think about the role of culture, we were just discussing just now about how this exhibition at the back here, thinking about how the UAE will reach net zero, starts with culture. So culture is everything. It underpins all the kinds of actions that we think about in terms of making a better world. Culture is knowledge, culture is power. It's really absolutely fundamental to everything that we think about in terms of societal coming together, improvements, and creating kind of community. And then thinking about the arts in general, well, I mean, I may be biased because I work in this world, but I feel that the arts have a unique capacity to create emotional connections. And if we want to convert kind of concern and awareness into action, we need an emotional connection. That's how the public becomes engaged in thinking about the climate crisis and how to take action and change the way that we do things in our everyday lives. So that kind of emotional connection is absolutely key. So is communication. So we think about the arts as a way of kind of communicating with the public, bringing communities together, embedding these kinds of very fundamental issues in society itself. The arts have such a role to play. And then, as we've talked about, and obviously with the Ministry of Culture and Youth has been doing a number of studies on how the creative industries are growing globally, but particularly in the UAE, we see that the creative industries are growing, faster than many other sectors. They have a huge, they're a big employer globally and locally as well, and they really are an industry in their own right. So if we think of everything that that industry can do to communicate the wider issues and to change the way the industry itself works, there's huge capacity there for the arts to address climate change and to increase the level of engagement in these issues.
Absolutely. And in what ways has Art Jameel created unique approaches or ways of creating this social change towards climate?
No, well, thank you for asking that. It's sustainability and addressing the climate crisis is right at the heart of all our work at Art Jameel. As you mentioned, we have our centre here, Jameel Arts Centre, which is in Jeddah waterfront here in Dubai. It's Dubai's contemporary art museum. And we use the museum and we use the arts as a way of kind of addressing and communicating the climate crisis. So we start in a way by thinking, how can we walk the walk as well as talk the talk? So we've been looking at our own buildings and thinking about how to reduce their carbon footprint and how the way as an organization we can reduce our waste and our carbon footprint, and to make all those kinds of learnings public as well. So everything is shared with our colleagues across the sector. The second way we're really thinking about sustainability and the climate crisis is through public programs and actions that we can take to engage the wider public, and also take the Dubai and the UAE as our base and to communicate out to the region from that. So a couple of examples. An exhibition we just finished recently titled An Ocean in Every Drop, looked at the human relationship with water and the oceans and how that's expressed through the arts. So people, were coming to our exhibition here at Jameel Arts Centre thinking, I'll see some art and take the family for a day out. And through that, really being able to think about water, oceans, our relationship with the climate and how we can all of us have a role to play. Another example is a very accessible community program like Down to Earth, our annual festival, which is known as the UAE's Green Gathering now.
And it just happened, right?
Just happened last weekend, so just right on the eve of COP, and obviously in the year of sustainability, it brings a special meaning to that. And that's a day-long festival where we run a plant market, we have a green bazaar that shows eco-entrepreneurs from the UAE and all the kinds of things that people are inventing and doing here. Through to workshops, children's programs, family activities. So it's a way, again, of really extending a hand out to the community and saying, come in, think about the climate change and sustainability through the eyes of artists, through actions taken in the arts. And then thinking about this regional role, which I mentioned before. So we've teamed up with the British Council to launch a program, Anhar it's called, looking at how the arts can address the climate crisis. So that's a regional program that's accessible for the whole of the Arab world, but based here in the UAE. And that invites artists to come up with programs that they can do in schools, how they can engage children, families, teenagers, all ages, and draw that debate out into the wider world. It also provides funds for arts organizations to address their own carbon footprint. So very practical actions that arts organizations can take to bring down their carbon footprint and their waste. So everything from solar panels to windmills to special new endeavors in that field. And then the third element is a large-scale network of arts organizations coming together to address these themes through global collaborative actions. So that's Anhar. And then alongside that, we have the Research and Practice Platform, which is a collaboration with Dubai Culture. And that's inviting UAE-based artists and creatives to come up again with eco-focused and sustainability-focused projects, which we can then award with grants so that we can see those come all to fruition through 2024. So building on the legacy of COP and going beyond. And our final big action at the moment is thinking about R&D, so research and development. What role can artists play in that? And I think we know that, again, we're in the same field, so we're a little bit biased, but artists and designers, architects, they're really trained to be out-of-the-box thinkers. So if we want to think of new ways that we can approach the crisis that is affecting all of us, I feel that the arts have a very particular role to play in that. And our role as Art Jameel, being based in Saudi and in the UAE and working together with the ministry and everybody that's based here in the UAE focused on this area, we try to think from here. So traditionally, the ways in which arts organizations address the climate crisis has tended to come from the global north. One example of that is the way that arts organizations are mandated to look after their collections. So if you think museums like us, we collect art for the benefit of the public. If we want to loan an artwork from a museum elsewhere in the world, we're usually, as part of the forms we have to sign, we have to commit to keeping that artwork at a certain level of humidity and temperature. But if we think about the majority world, across Asia, Africa, the Middle East, Latin America, those kinds of temperatures and humidity controls are impossible for us to achieve, and are they even desirable? So we're engaged in a big research program at the moment, working with colleagues across the global south to say, let's think from our perspective. We're in a very humidity high environment. How do we preserve artworks? How do we show in museums? We want everybody to be welcome without freezing into our galleries, and having to try and achieve the kinds of temperatures and humidity controls that actually then damage the environment further. So this is actually a new piece of research that's very critical to all of us. And speaking to colleagues in Europe and North America, they're saying, well, actually, this is really relevant to us. Our temperatures are going up as well. So let's reconfigure the way we think about art and how we preserve artworks for the future. So that kind of piece of research, thinking from the ground up, from Dubai to the rest of the world, is also very key for us.
Right, that's incredible. I think a few months ago you held a 2-day Culture and Climate Summit, and I had the pleasure of attending that through my capacity at the Ministry of Culture. And could you share with us maybe some of the outcomes that came out of that summit, as well as because there were voices from the region that were there in the room. We had people from Jordan, from Lebanon. How was the outcome that came out of that summit, first of all? And what would you say is the role of the creative community in driving the UAE sustainability agenda?
Well, that was, thank you for asking about that, and it was wonderful to have you with us. So the Culture and Climate Summit was a collaboration also with the British Council, who put us in touch with some climate action groups in the UK who came out to the UAE and engaged with our colleagues from across the region. And as you said, we had people from Jordan, from Palestine, Iraq, Kuwait, all over, Lebanon, Egypt. And the idea was to bring us all together, arts leaders together with ecology leaders, to think about, again, from the ground up, from the perspective of the Arab world, how do we address this together? And of course, you know, if you're thinking from the perspective of Lebanon, there are huge challenges at the moment with electricity, with power. So people are dealing with those kind of situations. At that time, earlier in the year, there wasn't the war going on in Gaza, but there is now. And we can think, you know, our colleagues there are struggling on many different levels with extreme violence and extreme suffering at this time. And we can see in these kinds of situations, thinking about climate change may seem like something far down the agenda, but we're saying this is all connected. It's to do with social justice. It's to do with people being able to think about their futures. And luckily, you know, here in the UAE, we have an incredible future-oriented leadership that's encouraging us to think, what about 2030? What about 2050? Where are we going? And what about 2071? You know, where are we going as a country? And how do we sort of think very positively and innovatively about that kind of future? So the Culture and Climate Summit was a 3-day and very intensive workshop in which all these different arts leaders and ecologists came together, and we thought through how do we exact change from here in a way that is relevant to us and in the Arabic language, so really thinking very locally relevant. And there are 2 major outcomes out of that. One is a charter which is being co-written by all the people that were in the workshop about how, as the arts industry or creative industries in the region, how are we going to collectively address the climate crisis. So that's one charter that's coming out of that. And another is a toolkit. So this is a toolkit in Arabic and English, bilingual toolkit, that enables arts organizations to reflect on their own carbon footprint and make those changes in their own buildings and also with their own communities. So this is a very, very concrete example of how we can switch up the agenda and really address it in a very meaningful way.
And if we're looking at from in terms of the cultural projects that Art Jameel has been doing in terms of research and communicating the urgency of the environmental issues and the crisis that we're currently going. We've seen that Art Jameel recently or is about to complete the pavilion called Tarabat. Could you share with us a bit more about that pavilion?
No, well, thank you. So this has been a hugely ambitious project for us that we're nearing completion. We were very lucky to have some sponsorship from Abdul Latif Jameel as well, so they've come in and helped us sponsor this. We're working with an incredible architect, Adib Dada. He's known as the other Dada on his practice name. And he is a regenerative architect. So all his buildings aim to give back more to the environment than they extract. So actually to be positive in the way that they address the climate crisis. And yes, we launched the pavilion on Thursday. Everybody's welcome to come for a special breakfast and look at the pavilion together with us. The idea is with the pavilion is that it pioneers and trials new kinds of organic building materials that are all developed here in the UAE. So to give a few examples, we're working with a new substance date form, which is made from the pits that in the middle of the date. Normally these get thrown away. They can actually be made into a kind of concrete-like kind of substance which can be used in the building process. Another is Desert Board. So this is another SME eco-entrepreneur from the UAE who's developed this new way of treating palm frond waste. So if we think, you often see as you drive around Dubai or in your gardens, people cutting the palms, the dead palms off the palm trees. These are usually put into landfill or burnt by farmers, which obviously is contributing to the deformation of the ozone layer. So the Desert Board harvests these dead palm leaves and creates a kind of new type of wood from it. A kind of desert is called Desert Board. And this can be a replacement for lots of other building materials, can be used in interiors and exteriors as well. So we're trialing the use of that. We're also working with...
sorry to cut you, all with local organizations?
All with local organizations. And it was all built actually within a couple of kilometers radius of Jameel Arts Centre in Jeddah waterfront. So really thinking about UAE materials that are created by UAE-based eco-entrepreneurs, and thinking about how do we trial and pioneer these building materials in a way that then can be taken up by other sectors and actually used in the building industry. So other materials, for example, there's a fantastic organization called Mycosphere here. They use mushrooms and fungi to grow new types of very solid kind of building materials as well. So mushrooms, coffee, we've taken all the coffee grounds that are used by our restaurant table and also our coffee shop, incorporated them into the compost. So it's a really pioneering kind of building. And the structure itself is a kind of dome web. And we've created that out of steel that's untreated and particularly kind of constructed in certain shapes that then can be sunk in the sea after the building is finished, and those will grow coral. So we're liaising with an amazing climate conservation group in Fujairah, and the actual structure itself will be sunk in the sea when it's coming down in April after Ramadan and after Eid. The structure itself will be sunk in the sea to grow coral, and all the cones that sit in this structure, which are all made from these materials I was just describing, can be given out to the community, and we'll be planting them in people's gardens and in corporate offices' gardens and things like that. So they will go on to a second life. So the whole structure itself is not only carbon neutral, but it's actually carbon positive. So it's giving back more to the environment and creating homes for insects, birds, plants, native plants of the UAE while it's up. And then afterwards, it has a zero footprint. Right. More than zero, if that's a term.
I think that's incredible. And I think if we go back and look at it more from an institutional perspective, what are some potential metrics or internal KPIs or standards that you would recommend? We have a few arts organizations in the room. I spot a few creative practitioners. What would you say are good metrics that you could encourage them to place to actually monitor their sustainable practices and the outcomes of that?
That's such a great question, Wahida, because it's something that we talk about a lot as arts organizations. I mean, we're about creating environments for mass publics. So something like Down to Earth, for example, our festival that each year attracts thousands and thousands of people. And that's one sort of metric that we tend to use in the creative industries to measure success, like how many people came. But the new kind of idea with arts organizations over the last kind of 5 to 10 years is not only how many people can we attract, but what kind of impact are we having on their lives? So how do we know if someone comes to a program at Jameel Arts Centre and they experience something that expands their worldview, how do we know that they've gone out from that program with a different perspective on life? And if we think about that kind of impact being on an individual level and then on a community level and then on kind of society at large, all of us in the sort of arts industry are thinking about how to create new kinds of metrics to measure impact and change, and whether the extent to which we're able to sort of achieve that. So that's one sort of strand that we're thinking about a lot, and doing surveys, following children. So we've just started an in-depth relationship, for example, with a number of schools in UAE where we're inviting children in from a young age, and then we're doing a very longitudinal study to see how their visits to Jameel Arts Centre impact on their lives as they grow through the school system. But the other major area is obviously around carbon footprint. So Around 4 years ago, we started at Jameel Arts Centre to measure our carbon footprint, our water use, and our kind of waste that we're producing from our building. And we've started to introduce a carbon budget for everything we do. So each exhibition comes with its own carbon budget, and we debate as a team, okay, I can do 1 flight to New York, or 3 within the Gulf. Let's measure, for example. So we sort of can't, for each project, we try not to go over our own carbon budget and restrict ourselves to sort of working within that. And then also taking a lot of measures to reduce water use. All our gardens now are desert gardens. They feature UAE native plants. And if you think of the plants of the UAE that come from here, they obviously use minimal water, but we've got very used to very lush green environments where we think that's actually what's natural to here. But retraining our visual minds to think of the beauty of the UAE desert and the way that the plants kind of survive here is another kind of factor, and that's brought down our water use really quite significantly. And then introducing new habits for the team and for our visitors as well of very simple things, switching off lights. We only use water that's harvested from humidity. So we work with another UAE company that's fantastic, Air Water Company, based in the UAE, invented in the UAE, where their machines, their drinking water machines, harvest from the humidity in the air to create drinking water. So no more plastic at any of our centres, and all our water is coming direct from the atmosphere. And thinking about what we were saying about collections, this is obviously a double whammy. So we're creating drinking water for everybody to use. We're also, by harvesting from the humidity in the centre, we're bringing down the humidity in the building as well. So it has a sort of twofold. So I really highly recommend anybody to go out and get one of these machines because they're really amazing. And obviously working with our particularly humid climate. So these 2 things, and then obviously the other we're thinking about engagement, community engagement, is tracking the popularity of events that are focused on climate change. So I think probably because of the ways that the UAE has been focusing on COP and the Year of Sustainability, from last year's Down to Earth to this year's Down to Earth, we saw a 50% increase in audience coming to that event. So just this kind of general community awareness and people wanting to do something, wanting to contribute, and maybe the unique power of the arts to convene, to create spaces for people to come together, I think is something that we can all work and harness more.
Right, absolutely. How do you think, I mean, you've spoken a bit about, your partnerships through Tarabat with other locally based organizations. How would you say cross-sector industry partnerships could really help us in achieving our agenda towards net zero?
Oh, well, I think absolutely crucial. And one of the great benefits of us working together, if we think of Art Jameel and the Ministry of Culture and Youth, for example, is our conversations are often about, okay, how do we work with the ministries that we're closest to really kind of look at joined up government. So whether that's through education, the RTA, Transport Authority, for example, thinking about public art and raising awareness, it can be very, I think it's the only way to work. I mean, and this particular crisis, that the climate crisis, is something that relies completely on collaboration, right? It's in no way, we're not, we can see it here with all the nationalities that are represented in all the governments. This is not a kind of competitive field. It's not about who can reduce their carbon footprint best. It's all about sharing knowledge and really making sure that we're working together. This week we've joined up with our sister organisation, Community Jameel. Both organisations, both philanthropic organisations, Art Jameel and Community Jameel, are majority funded by the Jameel family, who are originally from Saudi Arabia but based in the UAE and all over the world now, as well as Saudi. And their focus is much more on science and thinking together with scientists, and they work with MIT in the States, with Imperial College in the UK, and with universities throughout the Gulf as well. So we've been looking a lot this week at science and arts and how the two can kind of join forces together. harnessing that kind of unique power of the arts to communicate together with that kind of scientific knowledge and joining those two forces together. While we're speaking here, we have a conference at Jameel Arts Centre thinking about oceans and looking at water. And so that combines arts organisations, foundations, scientists, ecologists, all coming together. So yeah, I couldn't agree more. This is the only way to tackle this is through collaborative, open-ended thinking that really can, address some of the most complex issues of our time, but in ways that can communicate very accessibly to the whole public.
Right, absolutely. I think it's key that, and it's integral that we're including arts organizations, the cultural sector within policy-making initiatives supporting climate change, and not just having it as climate change, but rather culture-based climate action, sorry.
Yeah.
I think we have a few minutes left. I'd love to open up the floor in case anyone would have a question or two for our panelists today. Any questions? Yes, go ahead. I think there's a microphone.
Hi, I'm Sophia. Thank you so much. It's very inspirational, and I absolutely love what you're doing. A question about measuring emissions. You've mentioned that you do that. What kind of tools do you use? And do you measure just within the organization internally, or do you also measure carbon footprint of visitors, maybe partners? Would love to hear more. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, the question, I don't know what you heard, was around the tools which we use to measure our carbon footprint. So we started with a really comprehensive study that took into account the flights that we take, even the journeys that the staff take coming in and out of work. I have to say that on the sort of travel side of things, we started measuring in 2019, and obviously when the pandemic came in 2020 and we collectively and globally had this realization that we can actually work in a hybrid way, we were able to reduce a lot of our carbon footprint through reduction in travel, reduction of working from home on occasion and things like that. We also looked at usage of water and electricity. So a very simple thing is, every month when we get our bill from DEWA, we do a sort of measurement of looking at that and thinking, have we managed to reduce the cost? Have we managed to reduce our usage this month, and if so, why? And we analyze every single month, so we have a sort of graph that we look at the whole time. We've also looked at the kind of per head. Good to mention visitors, because one metric is looking at per head of population of visitor to each of our centres. How much are they kind of contributing to our usage or reducing and such? And obviously the more people that come, the more that kind of cost per head is reduced. So we're looking at sort of more and more engagement with our centres and our ideas, reduces that kind of carbon footprint. And then it's a matter of sort of really looking at everything from behaviour of staff, behaviour of visitors, and how we're able to sort of draw that awareness into everything we do, through to the sort of macro. So just making sure that we switch off our lights. For example, the facade lights used to be on 24/7. We're all addicted to kind of looking at beautiful buildings at 2 o'clock in the morning in Dubai. We tend to sort of light everything. We reduced that completely, so we now switch off at midnight. That saved us a lot of, so very sort of practical actions like that, and just building that awareness into absolutely everything we do. And we're trying as we go through the years to bring that down all the time. And through conversations with bodies like DEWA as well has been really instructive, because there's a huge amount of waste when it comes to kind of, leaking pipes and, very practical things like that that we need attention to. So that's been something that we've worked on, very instrumentally together. And then the arts industry as a whole, I think there's, the kind of 90% of the art world, which is museums and public art, has a certain amount of awareness, but the kind of 10%, which I guess is the same in most industries, that's involved in international art fairs, the commercial art world, shipping art around the world, and flying a lot from place to place. This is the real sort of point that we actually need to look at as well. So we're lobbying very hard for everyone to reconsider the way in which they look at things. But obviously from an arts perspective and a museum perspective, we're keen that we don't think the answer is putting everything online or reducing engagement because we want people in our centres to experience art physically. So it's a big conundrum. Sorry, I'm getting a real, I think we're out of time.
I think our time here has come to an
Yes.
end. Thank you so much, Antonia.
Thank you.
I think this conversation was enlightening to hear about the different initiatives that our Jameel and other organizations in the UAE are acting as catalysts to promote fundamental change within creative communities, moving towards climate action. I hope you enjoyed our session here today. Thank you for being with us, and I wish you all a great day ahead.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Wahida. I don't think we could have ever done it in 15 minutes.
I know. Shall we? Let's go ahead and finish.